Yet again, I have found an infamous, and this is a really, when I say infamous, this is one of the big guys. So if you look here, I mentioned in the last video, Gaetano Badalamenti, and that's this badass right here. He was the big boss of the Cinisi, Sicilia, which is right just west of the city of Palermo, and the western end of Sicilia. This guy was the head of the Cinisi mob, and I mentioned him in the last video, because a name like Badalamenti, there's probably 1,000 on my family tree. I mean, this guy got his hands into everything, but the big one, the real big one, is called the Pizza Connection, and it's a $1.6 billion drug trafficking ring that used pizzerias as fronts to distribute heroin from 1975 to 1984. And he was also sentenced in Italy to life imprisonment in 2002 for the 1978 murder of Peppino Impastato. Now, I mentioned in the last video about Peppino, and he had been a witness to his uncle, Cesare Manzella, who I did, of course, the subject of the previous video, who's a victim of a car bombing, allegedly on the orders of Gaetano Badalamenti, who was the underboss to Cesare Manzella at the time. So that's how you take over in the business there. You just whack the boss. This pizza connection, there's a lot to go through here. The trial centered, it was the longest trial in American history at the federal level. I think it's still the longest, lasting about 17 months. It was the longest trial in the judicial history of the United States. It says that there were 18 convictions and sentences handed down on June 22nd, 1987. And said the trial centered on a mafia-run enterprise involving processing heroin from Sicily.
Picture it. Sicily.
And morphine purchased from Turkey and Southwest Asia, and cocaine from South America for final distribution through the United States through independently owned pizza parlor fronts, as the money was laundered through several banks and brokerages in the United States and overseas. The enterprise was estimated to have imported 1.65 billion of heroin into the United States, namely to the Northeast and Midwest, between 75 and 1984. Wow. For this was a big deal. Arrests of conspirators were coordinated in the United States, Italy, Switzerland, and Spain on April 8th, 1884, following the capture of Gaetano Badalamenti and his son Vito Badalamenti. His son Vito was the only one that was acquitted. Two of the defendants were actually murdered before they got to trial. This was a really big deal. And so it says one of the witnesses, let's see what we got over here. One of the witnesses was a Sicilian mafia, Tommaso Buscetta, who had already revealed information to Italian magistrate Giovanni Falcone to prepare for the Maxi trial, was extradited in December 1984 to the United States, where he received a new identity from the government and was placed in the witness relocation program. In exchange for new revelations against the American Mafia in the Pizza Connection trial. So I do want to point out here, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get to a video on this, but any opportunity to mention Donnie Brasco, I will do it.
If Donnie calls, tell him, if there's going to be anyone, I'm glad it was him.
Former undercover FBI agent Joseph D. Pistone, who infiltrated the Bonanno crime family. Of course, Joe Bananas lived in Tucson here in Arizona. Infiltrated the Bonanno crime family between 1976 and 1981 using the alias Donnie Brasco, also testified at the trial. Now, I know that Joe Pistone does interviews now, but it's very difficult, you would imagine, given his life, to get information. But I probably got quite a few Pistones on my tree. We'll take a look and see just how many Pistones we have on the tree. Oh, okay, I got 118. So I do have all right, 118. Not too shabby. But what's interesting here is if you look at the defendants, Gaetano Badalamenti, Salvador Catalano, Baldessari, Amato. I have an Uncle Tony. His name was actually Baldessari. Vincenzo Randazzo, Amarandazzo, Alfano, Palazzolo, Evola, another Badalamenti, his son, Giuseppe Trupiano, Giuseppe Vitali, and Giovanni here, Salamone, Greco, Polizzi, these are names that actually are on my tree. I'm not saying that they're related, but I'll have a video in the next few months where I'll see how many of these other infamous gangsters may be on my tree and connected. What's interesting about this particular gangster, we actually have video of him that's here on YouTube of all places. And so we actually, you can, there's at least one other video of him.
La mafia in Sicilia sino agli anni 70.
Intanto non la trovo appropriata la collaboratore di giustizia, perché io vedo la giustizia è una cosa e la legge è un'altra cosa. Come le vedo io.
I'll have that linked in the description if you want to check that particular video out. I have a little more problem with it because my Italian, Sicilian, un poco, it's, I'm still learning. It's really cool to have videos of people that I'm actually talking about here in the video, especially an infamous gangster, because typically, there's not going to be many, they don't do interviews. It's the nature of the business. So let's get into the actual family history, the genealogy work that I was able to do for Gaetano Badalamenti. I've already revealed here, he is on my tree. Yes, he is distantly related. I was able to get back, because he was born in 1923, and his wife were about the same time. I wasn't able to get any information about his wife because Teresa Vitale, Vitale's just too common a name. You gotta, when you're doing genealogy work, you gotta have the documents. If you don't have the documents, don't put them on the tree. Because this is Cinisi, and the records for Cinisi are amazing on Family Search. They are not searchable, but they are indexed in the original records. So if for example, we're going for a marriage record, I'll open this up here. We go for a marriage record. You go to the beginning of the record, and we have an index. So if you've got the names, then you can just look here in the index. These church records are in Latin. So if you go to look up Filippo under FIL, you will not find it. You have to go under PH. So because the names are Latinized here. So it makes it kind of easy because you're not going to, certain names, if they're, depending on the scribe, like Antonio and Antonina, you might not be able to pick out, the scribe may be very sloppy, but when it's spelled out, Antonius, that's Antonino. So the church records are really good. So you just have to go to Family Search, you go to the catalog, and you go and you plug in what city. Here we're looking for Cinisi, and I'm able to get these records. Are insanely good. So Gaetano is distantly related to me. He's on the tree. It's fourth great grandnephew of wife of first cousin 5 times removed.
I am your father's brother's nephew's cousin's former roommate.
What's that make us?
Absolutely nothing.
And he did wind up dying in prison in 2004. And I was able to get back pretty damn far. So as you can see here, it goes back like a lot. Yeah, it goes way back. So you can see I go way far back. And so one of the things I've noticed that if we go back far enough with a lot of these, like Angelo Badalamenti, also from Cinisi, who's the composer who recently passed away, took his line back far enough, and it was the same city as Mia Familia, Carini, which is right next to Cinisi. So yes, I was able to get back to 1562, and Vincenzo Badalamenti is how they spelled it back then. His line does go back to Carini, which is probably why we have any connection at all. But what this also does, I found out that Gaetano Badalamenti was related to everybody on that 1920 census in New York and St. Louis that I had done in the previous videos. So not only was I able to connect him to all the people from Cinisi who immigrated and were on the 1920 census for St. Louis and New York City, but as I mentioned, Gaetano was convicted in Italy of the murder of Peppino Impastato. We follow this line down, this part of the Badalamenti. We follow this down, and we have Peppino. So there is a direct line for Peppino to Gaetano. It goes back a bit. It goes back quite a ways. But that Badalamenti line is connected. If we see here, we see this is the Badalamenti. It does connect far back, but it does connect. And not only that, but he also has a fairly direct connection to his old boss, Cesare Manzella. So we follow the Cesare Manzella line. They connect also. So Gaetano Badalamenti, he's just related to all these people. So I want to just take a minute to discuss how I'm able to get so far back. And I have the documents to prove all this. How was I able to get this far back? What I do is I look at the marriage records, because the marriage records are going to have the parents. I'm able to go in and, let's say for Giuseppe Badalamenti, and you see I have his baptism record, I have his marriage record. So I get his marriage record, I go into the here, and I'm all, and I have to estimate based on their age at 25, averaging 25 years old when they're married. So given that, I can estimate, and then I go into the marriage. So if I've got someone, somebody who was born in 1850, I figure in mid 1870s, late 1870s or so, 1880, that's when he's going to have been married. So I can then go into the record, 1875, we'll say, so we'll just for here to demonstrate. So then I go into the index for the record, and I'm going to look for his name. Now, it's probably going to come up a few times, and then I just go into the record and find the one that has the same Molière, or the same wife. So using the marriage records, I can keep going back and going back and going back. I just keep getting the next marriage record. So for here, I find his marriage record. So here I get Giuseppe Badalamenti's wedding marriage record, and it's going to give his parents' names as Vito Badalamenti and Giuseppe Brusca, and that then I can then find Vito Badalamenti's wedding record and so on. And I do have all the records going back. This one actually was the Carini connection there, and I do recommend that you're doing work like genealogy work. Don't put them on your tree unless you've got the original documentation. You've got something to verify that the information you have is correct. So that's some information about the infamous Gaetano Badalamenti, Don Tano, who oversaw the massive narcotics business in the late 70s to the mid 80s. He was sentenced in a pizza connection trial and died in prison. He's related to everybody that I had in those first two videos regarding the people who immigrated from Cinisi to St. Louis and to Manhattan. He's also related to two people that he's accused of killing, convicted of killing, Cesare Manzella and his nephew, Peppino Impastato. And he's also, and unless he is distantly related to me, and his familia his Badalamenti line, well, all his lines do go back to Carini, Sicilia. Hey, thanks for watching, and I promise my next video is not going to be centered on an infamous mafiosi with a connection to mia familia. This was a huge name in music that I found inadvertently. I was really shocked, and it turns out he was not just in music, but he was also in a couple of movies, some really big-time movies that I was really surprised to get. And I have a little bit of footage for that. So definitely don't miss the next video.
Now go home and get your fucking shine box.